Okay, hello everybody. My name is Charles Severance. Welcome to my talk, Inside the World's Largest Python Course in Coursera. I'm a teacher, but my research area is educational technology. And so I've spent the last 15 years building gadgets and ways to teach better, and they all kind of magically came together in this Python course. And so this is just a little about me. These are my two tattoos. They're real. I have tattoos. I call these tattoos my CV. On one shoulder, I have what I call my research, which is educational technology. And on the other side, I have my education, which is where I went to school and where I teach. So what's a MOOC? So MOOCs came on the scene in about 2012, and they came with the idea that everything was going to be free. Which of course, free things don't last forever. About 3 years later, the venture capitalists wanted to make some money. And so now we've been doing MOOCs for a while, and they're still large. They're still open enrollment. They still are widely available, but there's sometimes a charge. And we've learned a bunch. We've learned things like 4 weeks is the good length for a class for self-motivated students, because if you have a 15-week class, people have things go wrong. And so we've learned a lot, and we're much better at building MOOCs now than we were in 2012. In 2012, there were literally only 4 universities that were providing these things. And here we are 6 years later, and there are hundreds of courses, hundreds of Python courses, and lots of providers. So this is a screen, and I don't know if you can see it back there. That is, I took a screenshot from my Python for Everybody class, and it has 1.6 million total visitors, 500,000 active learners, and 113,000 people graduated from this class and finished this class. And this is one of my 5 Python classes. This is the largest one. And the smaller numbers are telling you how many people per week. So this week, 650 people finished this class. And so it's a very large class, and it's very active and very hard. Another bit of data that we can gather from Coursera is where the students are coming from. And so if you look on the right-hand side, you see that 30% are coming from the United States, but the second largest source of students in my class is from India. So 19% of the students in my class are from India, and some of you in this room are in my class. So it turns out when I started with Coursera, we had no idea about making money, but in the last few years they figured out how to make money. And the way it works is I actually get some of that money. And so those of you who have paid for your courses, some of that money comes to me. I get to travel. I get to go places, like I come to India and speak at KaiCon. But I also have been doing some fun things, and so I figured I would share with you some of the things I've done with your money, the money that you paid. So the first thing I do is I play old guy hockey, and I bought hockey jerseys for everybody on the team with my open source project Sakai, which is an open source learning management system. That's one of the things I did. Another thing I did with the money is this is a picture of my son. He's handicapped. He's playing wheelchair rugby there, but for a large part of his life he did a thing called Hippo Therapy, which is a situation where handicapped children are put on horses to help them develop their body. And he's been doing this for a long time, and I gave some of your money to a charity that operates this operation for young handicapped people to ride horses. So I did that. Yeah, I mean, I didn't start doing this to make money, and so as I get money, I try to do good things with it rather than just sort of buy a Tesla. I don't have a Tesla, and I probably never will have a Tesla unless they get cheaper. So, but I've done a few silly things too. And so the silliest thing I've done recently is I'm building a race car. And I'm building this race car, I call it the Sakai car. In the Sakai open source project, we have a mascot. We call it the Sakaiger. And I'm building this race car that looks just like it. And I actually, if you go to Sakai car, you can see the building of this thing. When I go home, the next race that we'll be in will be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of next week. So I'll actually be putting on a racing suit and driving around racing this little car that's decorated to look like this little tiger. So that's some of the fun things that I do with the money. So this course is an outpouring of both my research and my teaching. And my research since 1995 has been in educational technology. And so when MOOCs first came out, they weren't very exciting. They typically would record lectures. Sometimes they would record lectures in the back of the lecture hall at Princeton. They would have some PowerPoint. They would build a few quizzes. And the advanced, clever thing that they would do would be to use peer grading. And those classes quickly all looked the same. And so I didn't want to do that. And I've been working on educational technology for a long time. This is a long list. I'll go through some of these things. I'll just say this started in 1997, where I was building educational technology since 1997. So for me, recording lectures and making online classes starting in 2012 was really 15 years of work. I didn't know MOOCs were ever going to exist, but inadvertently I was preparing my whole life to build a really cool online course. So here are a couple of things that I've done in that 15-year period. I built a lecture recording system in 2000. I could scribble on the screen, I could put audio and video, the kind of things that we now take for granted, but I built this in 2000. That's a long time ago. That's like when you had like 100 megahertz 486 as your computer. And so I've been building this kind of technology and trying to push the boundaries, and then the world sort of catches up with me and commercial products do what I do. In 2002, I founded an open source project called Sakai, which built a learning management system that competes with Moodle and Blackboard and other learning management systems that do grading, and we use them on campuses. And so I'm effectively the BDFL, the benevolent dictator for life in this open source project, and that's why I'm so obsessed with Sakai and the Sakaiger. And so I still work on that project. But quickly in that project, we realized that we weren't going to be a very successful learning management system because we were open source. We have a really good product, but we don't have very much marketing. We're just a bunch of great people that build cool stuff, and we use it. But what I learned is the thing that I could do to help the market the most was build this standard called IMS Learning Tools Interoperability, which would be a standard that all of the products in the marketplace could implement, commercial or open source. And I was so passionate about this standard that I told the vendors in the marketplace like Blackboard and Moodle and Angel and WebCT, I told them that if they would implement this standard that I would tattoo their logo on my shoulder. And so over a 4-year period, as each vendor implemented this standard that allowed tools to be plugged into their learning management system, I would, with great circumstance, sometime with a camera crew, I would put one more tattoo on my shoulder, and now I have a whole ring of tattoos on my shoulder that I put one at a time with all these company logos. I also am very into open educational resources. I've been trying to give everything away for free, and I just somehow keep making money no matter how hard I try to do this for free. So this is my textbook, Python for Everybody. One nice thing about giving a textbook away for free, even though you can buy this textbook for $9, you can download it for free with no restrictions whatsoever, is I've had people come to me and translate this textbook to different languages for free, and then they give me the translation back. And in a sense, given that I've given it to them for free, it's quite natural for them to give it back. And so it's being translated in a number of different languages and published. And so I don't know how many of you know, but this textbook is available here in India for sale. And so I signed an arrangement with an Indian publisher because even though this textbook is $9.99, to print a book in Europe and ship it to India is very costly. And so by having a publisher here in India that just prints this textbook, it's local, it's got local currency, it's much cheaper than the US copy because it's in this economy. And there are ways that stuff is shipped here in India that's different than the way we ship things in Europe and the United States. And so by making this available in India, it reduces the cost and it greatly increases the convenience. And because it's a free book, and this Schroff Publishers called me up and said, hey, we'd like to publish your book in India. It's kind of popular. And I'm like, sure, well, go ahead and publish it. I just said, go ahead. And now I'm making money off of that too. And so it's just I keep giving this stuff away, and then I keep making money. So I'm building a race car, as I said earlier. The other thing I've done is I don't like quizzes. I think quizzes in online courses are cheating the student. A lot of people cheat on quizzes. And I think to some degree the reason people cheat so much in online quizzes is that the teacher is sort of disrespecting you by choosing to give you a quiz. So if the entire grade is based on quizzes and the quiz questions are kind of lame and you only get one time to take the quiz, I cheat on those quizzes too. I've seen my kids take online classes and cheat on quizzes. So if the quizzes are crappy, then why wouldn't you cheat? Because the teacher's kind of not bringing anything. So the thing that I've done instead is I try to make every assessment in my course interesting. I try to make it a puzzle. And I built a whole software project to do nothing but build fun assessments and fun tools that I can plug into all these learning management systems using the standard called Learning Tools Interoperability. So in my Python class, I don't ask you quizzes. I do have quizzes in my classes, but they don't count for grades, because the quizzes are just me trying. You watch a lecture, you take a quiz, and the quiz kind of says what you were supposed to have heard from me. Not that you have any skill, whereas a real assessment is write a Python program. And then I give you a way to write the Python program. I give you a way to test the Python program. You can try it over and over and over again. It's almost like a puzzle, and when you solve the puzzle, you get a grade, and you don't have to wait. The grade's instantaneous. So every one of these assignments that I write for the Python class, it takes me somewhere between 2 hours and 5 hours to write. So the assignments that you take are actually code that I write, and then I plug that code into Coursera or another learning management system. So I try to make it so that there's no reason to cheat on these assignments, because the assignments are fun, and they're a puzzle, and they're interesting to students. And this is an assignment from one of my SQL classes where I just say, okay, here, go make a table and insert these records and do a query inside this thing, and then report back what that query says, right? So it's, again, compare that to a silly multiple choice test to something that you're actually doing what I want you to do. I want you to be able to type database commands. And so these are real-world exercises. Another example from my Python networking class is I tell you to go into your browser and retrieve a web page and look in the developer console. Find a bunch of things in the developer console and type them in here. That's it. Usually most people will finish this assignment in like 1 minute. The learning objective was, I want you to know what the HTTP request response cycle is and how to use your developer console. So instead of, again, asking you a bunch of dumb quiz questions about that, I'm like, go do it and show me that you've done it. So I put a lot of energy. This is another piece of code that I wrote for this one assignment that's completely different to all the other pieces of code that I wrote for different assignments. The other thing I did is Coursera went from 100% free in 2012 to slowly but surely locking everything down, as I personally am committed to open education resources. And so I did not let Coursera put my courses behind a paywall. My course was late to go behind paywalls. They knew they would make a lot of money, and they did make a lot of money, and then I made a lot of money. But before I allowed that to happen, I actually extracted my entire course and built my own MOOC platform, and then I put the course up in my own MOOC platform that you can take independent of Coursera. And I told Coursera, I said, when you put up a paywall, if any student complains, we're going to tell them, you just go to www.pyfree.com and you take the course, and all the assessments are there, all the lectures are there. In some ways, it's more fun than Coursera because there are no due dates. You can take it, you can come back anytime. And a lot of people are using this, and you can also integrate it into your local learning management system, and then all the grades that you take, teacher can run a class and use all of these assessments. They adopt my textbook, and then they use the assessments in their own learning management system. And so it's a nice little modular thing. It's a little MOOC that I wrote, and I control completely. So I went to Coursera, and I plugged in this LTI, and I built all these LTI tools, and that's how I built my Python course in specialization. I used these exact same assessments and assignments on my own campus. I got a tattoo the day that I helped Coursera write that code. So I have a way of building Coursera classes that's very different than most teachers. I write a lot of software because I want to make really cool assessments. I test those assessments in my on-campus classes, and then when I go and I record my lectures, it's very quick, and so I can create classes far more rapidly. I believe that I hold the world's record for the number of classes and number of specializations done by a single faculty member. I have 2 specializations that I built from scratch myself, Python for Everybody and Web Applications for Everybody, which is a PHP, an SQL class. And I've got 10 courses. But that's talking about the technology, and there's a lot more than that in technology, because I felt like part of my job was not just to teach, but to engage people and make people feel like we were part of something. So one of the things that I claim to have done the first of anybody in the world is I had the first graduation online, and I think someone in this room who was part of that very first graduation, and I had everybody turn in a picture. We played the pomp and circumstance music, we had a keynote speaker, and we showed everybody's picture of the graduating class of our first capstone. And that's intended to make this feel like it's an actual educational experience rather than just a website where you're learning some stuff from. We also have, at the end of the second class, you get a graduation speech as well. And so this is my friend Kurt Bonk, and we taped a little graduation speech inside my office. The other thing I do is we have teaching assistants. And these teaching assistants are from all over the world. They are actually former students in the online classes. And I make a point of traveling. One of them lives in England, one of them lives in Italy, one of them lives in Seattle, Orlando, and Mountain View. And so I try to go find all of the teaching assistants that I have and thank them personally because they work very hard and they make my life really easy. The other thing that I started doing is face-to-face office hours. And no one has done this like me, but I come to a city and then I send email to 750,000 of my closest friends and I say, I'd like you to come meet me for office hours. And so I just last night had at 5:30 upstairs office hours and about 75 people showed up. And everyone who comes to them says, you're such a nice guy, Chuck, and I really appreciate the sacrifice that you're making to go to office hours. And I always tell people that it's not a sacrifice at all. Once I build a class, I feel very isolated and alone. And you're having fun with my class, and you're having fun in the thing, and you're writing cool stories about how fun it is. But I'm not part of all that fun because I've done all the recording and I build all the software and it works and it's great and so many people are learning. And so by me coming and meeting people face to face, it makes me feel like what I did was worthwhile. If I just sit there and I don't get to meet, and I don't know why other faculty don't have this urge to meet their online students around the world, but it's a great joy for me. You can see these office hours. I put them in the class as well, but I also have a website with little pins that show all the different ones, and you can look at all the videos that I've done over the years. There's about 60 of them. You'll notice that there are no pins in India because I'd never been to India. This is my first trip to India, but there will be pins in India after this trip. And so that office hours around the world. And so, wow, I got 12 minutes left. I'm doing pretty good, keeping us on schedule. And so for me, this whole MOOC thing, this whole Python for Everybody thing has been I feel very, very fortunate as a faculty member that my teaching and my research are the same thing. My research is in educational technology and building better educational technology, and then my teaching is using all the cool tools that I build for myself. And so I have a whole thrust of building what I want to call the first app store for education, so that we can do like what we do in our cell phones where we go to an app store and there's 1 million apps. I would like there to be 1 million apps for education. I'm working very hard in my research, but it's like research, it's taking a while. But everything, if you've used my class, that app store, everything is an app. All of the assignments that I'm building are little mini apps that I've built. And I want to build more Coursera specializations. I want to specialize in teaching people the things that I think everybody should know. So I have Python for everybody, web applications for everybody, which is really PHP and MySQL for everybody. The next thing I'm going to build is Django for everybody. And I'm going to start teaching that on campus in January, and I'm going to use my on-campus class to build a series of auto-graders. And then once I have those done, then I will create a MOOC. I'll create a website. You can actually go to the website right now, www.dj4e.com, and it's not got a lot of stuff in it right now. It's actually got only things there is 4 auto-graders for the Django tutorials, first 4 Django tutorials, because in my class I'm just going to say, you know what, your first assignment is just go through the 4 Django tutorials. So Django for everybody is like just being started. But then I have dreams of, I really want to teach all the wonderful computer science things that I know, but teach them to a broader audience. So after I get Django for everybody done, I want to build computer architecture for everybody. I think everyone should know how hardware works. I think everyone should know what machine language is. I think everyone should know what an assembly language is. I don't think they need to know much, but I think that I knew that when I finally learned what a gate was in my computer science knowledge, I'm like, oh, wow, that's what all this stuff is that I'm doing. So I think that if we're really going to understand educational technology, if we're going to understand technology, we've got to understand it all the way to that level. And then the last class I want to teach is a C programming class. But this C programming class is going to be like very different than everybody else's C programming class, because by that time you will have learned Python and Django and JavaScript and all these other things. And my C programming class is going to have basically one ultimate assignment, and that is, I want you to build a dictionary, right? So you started in your learning about how to use dictionaries, and then in your end, the last thing you're going to learn is how Python actually implements dictionaries. And so then at that point, I actually can relax, because I sort of have this beautiful thing that I've created this very accessible curriculum that's really aimed at, ultimately, even though a lot of people take it later in life, I really want this curriculum to be used in high schools before they even come to college. And so I want to prepare people, no matter what their career is. They don't have to be computer scientists. They can be designers, they can be artists, they can be lawyers, they can be biologists. I don't care what I think everyone should need to know some of these basic technical things, and that's what I'm trying to achieve. And so I think I have a little bit of time for questions, because I have 9 minutes left, according to mine. Is that right? Okay, so I'm done. Here's some URLs from my work, and I'll entertain questions if you have any. How do we do questions? You got microphones? Yeah, we do.
Just raise your hand and come over up here.
Yeah. Is this thing on? Is it plugged in? Oh, there'll be people that want to hear it on the streaming. Yeah.
So first, thanks for the talk. It was fantastic, really great, and very inspirational, everything you've done. And I was just wondering, you put your passion into this, and these courses that you have are like 4-week cycles. So how do you do in terms of like a feedback cycle and system? Every 4 weeks, maybe getting feedback and refining the course material. I mean, do you do usability testing? Do you open channels? I'm just curious about your process.
Yeah, that's a great question. So my methodology is to teach all these classes face-to-face for at least 2 semesters. And I tell my on-campus students that they're really the beta testers for my MOOCs, right? So I'm sorry, here you are. You know, there's these 40 people here. They're my on-campus class, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to turn this into a MOOC eventually, but you're my beta testers for the MOOC right now. And so when I did web applications for everybody, literally I taught that material for 2 years. And I had used all my on-campus students to debug all of the mistakes in all my autograders and my content and my PowerPoint. And so when I wanted to turn those into MOOCs, I didn't need a lot of feedback. And there were very few flaws in it at that point, because I'd done all the testing with people who could walk into my office and say, this is wrong, or you missed this, or you said this the wrong way. And so that's what I'm going to do for Django for everybody. I'm going to build it, evolve it with my on-campus students as my beta testers, and then, boom, I'll walk into a studio and I'll record all the lectures, and then it'll be a MOOC, and it'll be a MOOC. Most MOOCs, when they come up, the whole thing has been built from scratch. It's nothing but a MOOC, and then it has like a whole beta test and QA cycle that's a painful. My MOOCs, I do 4 classes, they come up and they like find 3 bugs in them, and they're turned on and they're off. And again, everyone looks at how I do it and they think, oh, that's too hard, I don't want to do it your way. And I'm like, you don't know how easy it is, right? Because I'm amortizing my development cost and using them on campus, and that's how I do it. So even like that C class and those architecture classes, that's not in our curriculum, but I'll like do a special topics class where I'll have like 15 people. I'm like, oh, let's all go learn architecture. And I have a bunch of on-campus students. I'll build all the stuff for them, and then I'll turn it into a MOOC. So yeah, my courses start out without too many flaws because I do so much pre-work.
Great, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Any more questions?
First of all, thanks for the talk. Can you hear me? Yeah. So I wanted to know. So the online courses are awesome, but what do you think will it take to take the online courses to get the credibility that the university courses have. Can I come? So what do you think it will take for the online courses to have the credibility that university courses have?
So the question is, no, I'm not working. So I need my. Oh, now I'm on. So if I understand the question is kind of about how these online classes are going to affect university education. Is that close?
Yeah, and
Okay.
one more. Yeah,
Okay, so I think that a lot of people, when they first heard about MOOCs, they sort of thought that that if we could just put everything in the computer and use the web, we could get rid of university education completely. And I don't think that's come to pass. I mean, we've been doing this now for 5 years. The way I see it at my school is the online programs are changing university education, but they're not replacing it. So because we have an online Python class, when I first started doing it in 2008, the first class you would take when you came to our campus was a really easy Python class because I had to teach everybody how to program from nothing. Now, we don't teach that class anymore. The class that is Python for everybody is not taught on campus anymore. We actually expect people to come on campus with basic Python knowledge. And if they don't have basic Python knowledge, we tell them, take the MOOC. And so now we can teach you more when you come on campus. And so I think that's a change, but it didn't replace on-campus education. It changed what we do. And I think that we're going to see a number of changes. I think that we're going to be able to teach skill classes like Python or PHP. I think we're going to teach those to kids before they even come to college. And I think when they come to college, campus, we'll do things that are more project-based and more interesting. But I still think we have to come together at some point. And the other thing that I do think is that people who are working are not going to quit their jobs to go get master's degrees much in the future. I just think that's probably a part that's going to go away. The very few people are going to quit and go into debt to have a master's degree. And I think that the online education, the best thing it's shown is how we can skill up people who are already working without having them to have to go back to campus. Okay? Thanks. Another question? Probably have time for one more.
Yeah, just a very small specific question. I had taken your Python class and on Coursera, and it was amazing, a real eye-opener, and I got to learn quite a lot. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
The thing which I wanted to ask was that autograders are fine for small pieces of code, but as the program, as you progress, they are not really sufficient to give you the the quality of feedback on the quality of code. So. So I just wanted to ask, is there any effort to improve it to an extent that it will also judge the quality of code and what you are doing in the code?
Yeah, first I'll agree with you. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, and that is that we've shown that we can teach certain levels at scale, right, with big numbers and auto-graders and things like that. But I don't think we've shown that you can really create skilled, sophisticated professional programmers using that kind of thing. So we at the University of Michigan School of Information are experimenting with a new degree that is a series of one-credit classes that add up to a whole year. And I think the key thing to go from sort of not knowing to knowing versus knowing to expert, you have to be more committed, right? I mean, people will take my Python class and they'll take it for 3 weeks, and then they'll quit for a year, and they'll come back, and then they'll take 3 more weeks, and they'll quit for 2 weeks, and then they'll go back and take the first part again. But eventually they find their way through, even with sort of low level of commitment. But I think to build sort of professional skill level, you're going to have to take this class, and then within a couple of weeks, you're going to have to take this class, and then a couple of weeks later, you're going to have to take this class. And this class, and then maybe we can build your skill up, and those classes will be, 150 or less people, right? But they're, and so the whole MOOCs, ooh, the MOOCs are really beautiful in that you can stop and start and stop and start, but you've compromised in how far you can take them, because the more advanced classes, you can't stop and start. And that's what going to school is you stay there for a while and you take classes that get harder over time. So I think we're going to experiment with the notion of threads of classes that get harder, and you can't take a year off in between these two classes. You really have to have just finished this class to take this other class. And I think we'll see the extent to which we can build professional level skills in this online program. We're going to have to take the numbers down, 100, 300 at the most, so that we can have professional teaching assistants giving real feedback to 300 students rather than 3,000 or 30,000 or whatever.
I think manual code review would really help, like especially if Coursera is charging for the course, they should be doing the manual, asking somebody to do manually the review for the code, and maybe charge a little extra for that, but like that would really help the the quality of because like people reviewing code really gives you the feedback which you need for the for writing.
Again, I will agree with you. I completely agree with you. And we're starting to experiment this semester on campus with doing something like that. And historically, I've always used peer grading to grade things that I couldn't write an autograder for. But what I'm increasingly thinking that I'm going to start using peer grading for is to get students to work on increasingly sophisticated projects. And instead of turning each step of your project into the professor and having them give you feedback, turn each step of the project into a peer grader, and you will have to grade 3 or 4 other people's work at step 1, and they'll grade your work, you'll get some feedback, and the teachers will look at everything too, because we'll have like only 300 students in the class, so you get a lot of feedback. And then next week you're going to do something a little more sophisticated, and you're going to get some feedback there. But you're also going to see 4 or 5 other students' work, and you'll be able to judge your own work, and we'll be able to learn from each other. And so I think if we kind of keep an open mind, I think we can get there. I think more feedback, higher expectations, better teacher-to-student ratios. I think we can get there, but we have to go to it with an open mind. And we have to just accept the fact that there might be certain things we have to release constraints or just keep a very open mind about that. But I think the future is really bright as long as we don't think that we're going to solve every problem with this one solution.